Hello and welcome to another interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's Sarah Bowles. Yay! Hello!
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's lovely to see you, and I'm so pleased that you've agreed to come on this.
Absolute pleasure. So thank you very much.
Well, it's going to be a chat about your comic career, and I'd like to go right back to the start, please, and ask you, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
This is not one of the funniest stories.
It doesn't matter.
But there we are.
Sure it is.
Well, it started when my mum died.
All right.
Which was 4 or 5 years ago. My mum and dad ran a jazz pub in Dover.
Right.
Which they'd run for pretty much 60 years. So obviously it's always sad when your mother dies. That's
horrible, yeah.
But the following day, my sister had a stroke.
Oh,
so
dear me.
suddenly, and I was working in the city doing wealth management. So suddenly life became really, really tricky.
Yeah.
And work thought I spent all my time at the pub. The pubs thought I spent all my time at work. And what I started to do, I just needed a bit of headspace to myself.
Sure.
I started going to comedy every night on the way home from work. So, we're so blessed in London.
Yeah.
I'd go to the Bill Murray, Top Secret, Camden Comedy Club, and you could just do an hour or a couple of hours where your mind was completely taken off your troubles, and it was brilliant therapy. And I did that for over a year. And then obviously got integrated into the whole London scene, and we are very blessed with the London comedy scene. And went to Edinburgh, and on the way back from Edinburgh, it was like, okay, life is beginning to settle down a bit. And then I just thought, do you know what, you could give this a try, which I'm sure we've all thought that, or many people have thought that once or twice. But the next thing I know, I did give it a try, and it worked better than I was expecting. So
that's brilliant.
So yeah, it's fairly recent.
So this was about 4 or 5 years ago, was it? Something like that.
So I basically dipped my toe into the water just before lockdown.
Right.
And then the universe obviously conspired to keep me out of comedy as well as everybody else. And then I went. I've been gigging kind of consistently for I suppose almost a year and a half now.
Yeah. Well, it's so true what you say about comedy being a tonic, because I lost my mum just before COVID, and my home city's Carlisle, and I was back in Carlisle with my brother, and we were going through a really tough time, and my brother said, look, he said, go to your comedy on Friday and it'll be a release for you. And it was The Noise Next Door were playing Carlisle.
Okay.
And I know them really well. They've been on here, and so I went along, and I was really low. Normally I'm on the front row or Life and Soul or whatever, and I'm sitting there with a pint of beer at the back, feeling really low, obviously because of the circumstances. And they jumped onto the stage and went, "Hello, Carlisle! Can anybody tell me anything good about Carlisle?" And somebody yelled out Carlisle United, the football club. They said, "Yeah, we'll have that." And then they went, can somebody tell me anything bad about Carlisle? And somebody in the crowd yelled out, "Richard Gill." And I'm sitting at the back with my pint of beer going, "Oh my God." And they went, "Is he here? He's normally in London." And I ended up singing on stage with them. And it was the ideal tonic. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible time. But it was just what I needed, And it took me a long time, obviously, to get over it. But it's that's the reason why I do what I do. You know, I go to a lot of comedy nights as a member of the audience and do this. I did actually have one go at being a stand-up comedian. There was a promoter that I knew years ago, and he said, have a go. So I ran out. It was a gong show. Couldn't be.
Oh, right. So you didn't ease yourself into it gently.
Well, I ran out, and the first thing I said was, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself." A perfect first line, because I'm his double. Somebody at the back just went, "Hock off!" And the promoter said, "Have another go." I said, "No, I think my duty's in the audience laughing at you all," which is how it's turned out to be. You are also a producer and a promoter for the wonderful Rat Pack Stand-Up Comedy Club at Camden Comedy Club, which I've been to many a night and had a great time. And you also do promote other production and promotion. How did all this come about?
So I started promoting some comedy at my parents' pub in Dover. Oh, so that was one of the other reasons why I got into comedy. My dad was a jazz musician. He had his band playing at the pub every week, and I was trying to kind of get my head around what made the pub so successful, and realized that was a key part of it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to be a jazz musician. I tried it a couple of times, but my syncopation is really not what people want. And I thought, well, maybe I could run comedy nights. So I started, and also kind of during COVID and post COVID, I had lots of friends who were comedians, and I know how difficult it was, how their income was just decimated.
Yeah, decimated, unfortunately.
Yeah. So anything I could do to help provide work. So I started putting gigs on in Dover. And I know Nathan. Nathan's is one of my favourite comedians. So when the producer at Rat Pack left, Nathan asked me if I'd be interested in taking it over. So
and there you are.
And yeah, it's been an absolute joy running that gig. It is a really nice gig. I don't know if it's because of the size of the room, we can get kind of 60, 70 people in. So it's not small, too small, but it's not too big either. It's always quite a friendly, intimate gig.
Very much so. How long ago was that you first joined there then?
So I used to go. I mean, that's one of the reasons Nathan and I know each other, is because I used to go that was one of my preferred shows. But I've been running it just over 2 years now.
Well done you, and thank you so much for all the laughter. I mean, when I go, I know I'm gonna have a good time, and it doesn't matter who's on. You're right; it's the atmosphere in the room. The last time I went, I became involved in the show through not having bags of crisps, and God bless him, he ran out and got everybody else in the audience bags of crisps, bar me. So a wonderful night. So you performed your first ever gig. Would this be in the pub in the pub in Dover?
No, the first gig would be at the Bill Murray.
All right. And that would be what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And what was it like? What did you feel like when you walked out? Were you nervous? Were you ready for them? What was it like? Can you remember?
I remember I was incredibly nervous, and most of the time I'm not that nervous now, but back in the beginning, literally I don't know how I walked onto the stage. My legs were so shaky, but it did go better than I expected. It was a friendly audience, so you know it certainly wasn't the Gong Show at Up the Creek or anything.
Not what I had to suffer.
No, I'm not sure that would be the best first
I
gig
don't
to
think it would.
do.
Never say never again, but
Yeah.
after that, I'd had it. I've spent.
So yeah, no, I enjoyed it, which was a relief. But at the
Yeah,
same time, um, I was kind of determined to keep going for a while because it was,
that's
um,
key, I think. Yeah,
yeah, it
Uh,
was something because I knew I was going to do the gigs at the pub.
yeah,
It was a case of, well, no, you have to get as good at this as you can. So
yeah.
I think maybe that was quite helpful because I didn't go on expecting to be good or even thinking, oh, I'm so funny, the world needs to hear me.
Well, you've got to go in confident.
But yeah, so that was that I mean I'd done a course with Francis Foster.
Right, oh, it's brilliant. Being on here is brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
really, really good. So it. I mean, I have to say, I'm a big fan of the comedy course. I like the
yeah,
structure of 6 weeks working with other people on your stuff, having to have made progress by the following week. And Francis obviously is brilliant, but
yeah,
also it means your first gig is generally a really friendly show because you've got your mates and everyone else's mates in the audience. So they would be pretty grim if they came in and started dragging you
that would
down.
not be right. So, as you progressed in the early days, I support many a new comedian, and I go along as their friend for the first 10 or so gigs. And because I've got the loud laugh, which I should get insured, that I keep going back. They keep inviting me back. Was this the case with you? When to get you into the rhythm of it, did you have a friend go every time with you, or with the free gigs, or how did it happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, back before lockdown,
Yeah,
my cousin who was at my first gig, she'd recently retired, and
right.
she absolutely loved coming along to all the bringer gigs, and it was just like a gift from God.
It's brilliant.
And
Somebody's there to like you.
yeah, she came along to gig after gig after
That's
gig.
brilliant. And you were away.
Yeah. And I mean, thankfully now because of the gigs I promote and the people I know, I generally don't have to do bringer gigs, but
Yeah.
I have actually booked into one, and it's quite tricky, I think, when you're a bit older, trying to find, or anyone in comedy, most of us do have other jobs as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're out gigging, the last thing you want to do is tag in with your mate to go to the
Well, that's it.
gig.
That's interesting 'cause it moves on to my next question. Did you ever find it difficult at all to break through? In other words, did you ever find it difficult to find gigs at all, or did you have regular work, or how does that side of it work? How do you book yourself onto a gig?
So it's certainly a little easier when you book gigs. You're generally you generally have contacts who are keen to keep you happy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's I don't do too badly getting gigs. I'd say it's always a challenge, and the thing is you're always looking to break through to the next level as well. So it is a case
God,
of
yeah.
um just doing your best and also being a bit brave and pushing yourself out there again. Because
I think that's true. I always say to comedians who come on here, I can imagine that it's all about experience. I always say to become a good comedian, you have to have a bad gig because it's
yeah,
all experience. It's the old Sarah Millican syndrome where she would wake up at 10 o'clock the next day and forget the night before whether it went good or bad and
yeah.
move on, and but take away the best bits of it. Would you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good
Yeah,
advice. And I certainly aspire to taking it, but I don't. I mean, I did it. I
Can't
did.
ever imagine you have a bad gig though.
I absolutely died at a Gong Show, and I
Oh,
mean,
you've
it
been on one
really,
as well.
yeah, so I booked it after. I know we're getting on to this, but after probably one of my best gigs, which was at Edinburgh,
Yeah,
and so I came back all kind of full of myself, and I booked on
fantastic.
the Gong Show at Up the Creek, and I mean it was
Oh dear.
brutal. I was 18 of 19. There was a train, I think train and tube strike on, so no one knew how they were getting home.
Right.
So I think I
Couldn't
went
be
on
better.
about 11:30, and I don't think I wanted to be there. I don't think anyone else wanted to be there, and I got gonged off pretty quickly, and it was devastating. And I was like, no, it's too late. None of the women have done that well. No one really wants to be here, and all this. And I was kind of justifying it all in my head, and then Blank Pen went on and absolutely smashed it.
No, oh no, oh dear.
Which was good. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's just undermined every single excuse I just made for myself.
Yeah. I'm interested. Just mentioning about the producing and promoting the Camden Comedy Club in particular. Are you responsible for booking the acts that go on there?
Yeah.
And if so, how do you go about doing that?
I mean, we just send messages out every now and again. So
Right.
we book reasonably far in advance.
Right.
And then obviously some weeks you have to make changes at shorter notice.
Yeah.
Different things happen. So we've got people who ask us,
Right.
we've got people we ask, and a combination of the two.
And that seems to work very.
That seems to work. Yeah.
What do you like to talk about on stage as a comedian? Do you have any particular themes or anything like that?
Well, what I want to talk about is kind of political stuff and social justice and so forth.
Well
But I think that's quite a honed skill that I perhaps don't completely have at the moment. So
Right.
so I just make do with dick jokes in the meantime.
Well, you
That's
can
not
get away with that.
not strictly true. But it's generally kind of anecdotal
Yeah.
stuff. I try and talk about something, that may hopefully will resonate with people. I'm a little more London centric than I'd like to be, but that is where I spend most of my time. So normally I talk about things I hope will resonate, but it will be anecdotal. At the moment it's mainly anecdotal.
Sure.
And then
That's great. And following on from that, how do you remember all your routines? Do you have it on notepads? Do you have it on your hand, or can you memorize it all well, or how do you do it?
So I try and memorize it, but I use new material nights to run through it from paper.
Right.
And then basically I break it into sections and try and memorize it. And I mean, I don't do this so much now because I'm doing more working from home, but I used to record it and then listen to it on my commute. So that, I mean, that's how I do it until I've got it pretty much memorized.
Yeah. One of the most creative things I've ever done, other than this blog and podcast, was I wrote a play for which we put on for Comic Relief, and made a lot of money from it. It was myself and my mate and a friend of ours produced it. And it's called The Applicant, and it's basically about me coming down from Carlisle to London, having never had a job interview, and I've got a successful girlfriend who's in the city, and I want to come down and be with her. And I had never had an interview, so my friend played all these interviewers because he was very good at accents, and I ran on having never had an interview and literally looked nervously in the waiting room from the waiting room at the audience, and started monologuing. So I'm setting the story up, and then it's the interview. So it was monologue, interview, monologue, interview. And we'd rehearsed this for about 10 weeks. And I wrote the thing, and on the first night, we did 3 nights. On the first night, I ran out and I forgot my monologue. So it was literally just words flying. I was like a rabbit in headlights. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I want to go home. And as soon as he walked on, I could banter off him because we brought it back. Do you think that's the same with comedy? Or do you think there are other tools that you use to bring it back?
I think that can be the same. And actually, that's something I'd forgotten. It was a bit of advice from Nathan Cassidy. Is I usually do have my set on me somewhere,
Right.
which not to refer to unless you do absolutely freeze, and so it keeps the nerves lower.
Yeah.
It is there if you need it, but
it's like a little prop you've got, thinking, my God, you're here. I never made a mistake on nights 2 and 3, I tell you that. And once you've done it, and I managed to get the best joke in. I called him Norman Oliver Hope. So whenever he had his rejection letters, it was Dear N.O. Hope, and that always got laughs. So it went really well.
Yeah. Oh no, that's brilliant.
I might bring it back. You never know.
Is it online or anything? Is it available at the moment?
I've got it as a script, which I might update because we did it about 10, 15 years ago, and I may well take it to Edinburgh one year. Who knows? But it's something to build on. You mentioned before about competitions, and you were a finalist in the Leicester Silver Stand-Up competition this year. Well done. What is your overall view of comedy competitions? Do you think they're a good thing? Do you think they help a comedian's career?
I do. But I think, I do. I enjoy them. I think I've recently did the Not So New Comedian of the Year and got into the semi-finals.
Congratulations.
And both Leicester and the Not So New Comedian of the Year, lovely gigs, lovely. Obviously Leicester is part of the Leicester Fringe, so really enjoyable. And I think certainly for newer comedians, if you're looking for gigs for people who haven't seen you, I mean, I know from experience, clips on YouTube are better than no indication, but they're not necessarily a good indication of a comedian's best work. So when you know that they've got to this stage or that stage, that can be quite helpful in getting more gigs. And when you've got more gigs, you're going to get better anyway. So I have to say I prefer a competition to a gong show. If
without a doubt, these gong shows are terrifying. Even take it from me. I was at Leicester this year. It's my 4th or 5th year there, and it's one of the most well-run fringes of the year. It's the first big fringe of the year. I had Jeff Rowe on here interviewed straight after his 30th anniversary. It was lovely. I went to his 30th anniversary celebrations. He has made a significant contribution to stand-up comedy over the years. It's just extraordinary. It's such a well-run fringe. Yeah. Everybody's friendly. I had a great time. I had a really great time. So it's well done you for doing that. And also before you mentioned about the nerves, do you still get nervous now when you walk on? And if so, how do you cope with them?
It's I mean, I just try and enjoy the gig. I try and kind of almost argue with myself. It's like, it's just a gig, nothing,
Exactly.
But and certainly some gigs I can pretty much just enjoy going on and doing it. But if there's something I'm hoping to achieve, like impress someone to get some other gigs, or just one of my heroes in the audience, then I can still get very nervous, and I do get really nervous, but I just kind of ignore it and press on,
That's
really.
on. Would you say that as soon as you've spoken into the microphone and got your first laugh, the nerves go?
No, not necessarily. But I think no, I guess when I'm in the flow of it, yeah,
Yeah.
I just get in the flow of it.
Because once you presumably once you get your first laugh and they're on your side, you can pretty much get away with whatever you want to say to them. Once
Yeah,
you've got them on side.
yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I'm just trying to think back. And I have to say, I guess I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but yeah, once they've laughed, probably a couple of times, then yeah, you do relax, and but also if you can see faces in the audience, which you can't always, but if you've got a couple of people you can see are enjoying it, it's like, well, that's.
I'm so looking forward to coming to see you, and you'll see my beaming face from the audience.
That will be really good.
Well, please, I will do my very best. Let's move on to Edinburgh itself. I talked before about fringes and festivals. I'm going to a lot this year. I've been to Brighton Fringe and Leicester Fringe. I'm going to be a judge at Hastings Fringe, which is going to be amazing in June. But I'm very, very lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I've been going every year since 2005. And I've only missed two, which obviously through the pandemic. What is your experience of the Edinburgh Festival? When did you first go? What did you first do? Have you been there as a punter? Anything like that?
Yeah. So my first Edinburgh Fringe was either 1981 or 1982. I can't be 100% sure. And it was it was very different then, obviously. And the thing I remember most about it, but it was also kind of what I was doing at the time, and there was a real feminist feel to it. So to see a female comedian would be a feminist comedian.
Right.
That shows that promoted women were feminist shows, and they were great, and I enjoyed them. But there was, and although I think there's still work to do, the fact that now you can go around Edinburgh and see probably hundreds of women doing amazing shows, and
so many brilliant ones.
Yeah, some will be doing feminist shows, but some won't. But that was not the case back in the early 80s. It wasn't obligatory to wear Doc Martens to these shows, but it was certainly encouraged.
Yeah,
dungarees and Doc Martens were encouraged, and as I say, it was. I remember seeing a bit more street art and performances, but maybe that was down to the fact that I was a student, didn't have so much money at the time as well.
So presumably in 1981, I don't know, but did you go up as a punter? Yeah.
So that was as a punter, and mainly I've been to Edinburgh as a punter. I've been, I think, obviously apart from the COVID lockdown, I went in semi-lockdown, which was that 2001, I presume.
Yeah, I think it did reasonably well, but it was all a bit iffy.
It was very different to normal.
Friends of mine went. Oh, it's a bit weird.
Yeah. No, I went to see Nathan Cassidy's show Bumblebee.
Yes, of course.
And I thought it would be funny to dress up as a bumblebee.
Yeah.
Because I thought that would kind of wind him up a bit.
So there you were.
And I'm so used to there being so many kind of art students and street performances and things like that. but in 2021, I was the only person dressed up as anything ridiculous. So
Wow.
it was. I felt a bit more of a Charlie than.
Have you performed at Edinburgh at all?
I've done mixed shows. I haven't done my own show.
You haven't done a solo show, so there's been like 2 or 3 comedians on one bill,
Yeah.
right? Because that's how people seem to progress. Comedians do that. And have you got a solo show planned, or have you got any?
No, I planned is probably. I mean, I'm certainly aspiring to a show, and I'm formulating ideas. I'm hoping that I might get the blessing from work to do it one year, but that probably
That's the thing.
definitely won't be this year.
Right.
Whether it be next year or the year after, but now that we're all working from home a bit more, it's suddenly not
Good,
out of the question that they might let me.
I have a
Sure.
brand new job which I love, Wandsworth Council, and they said to me, I said to them, can I have the a week off, the obligatory week off the Edinburgh Fringe in August? And I said, oh, August is our busiest time. And I'm like, oh no. So I went back and I said, look, I go every year. They said, well, we can give you 3 days. So I'm going at the end of August into the
Right.
holiday. So it's I've never been for the last week. And so I'm looking forward to it very much because everybody will be exhausted and I'll be full of enthusiasm.
Yeah, no, it's,
So it'll give them enough.
yeah,
But it is extraordinary. I mean, whenever I go, you step off the train at Waverley, and the atmosphere just hits you, and it is extraordinary what just how many performances they put on in the month of August,
yeah,
and it's such a breeding ground for artistic creativity as well as, of course, comedy. And it's just I've seen so many acts gone on to greater things. I saw Michael McIntyre in a hut.
okay,
I saw Harry Hill first perform there. I saw Alan Davis first perform there, Sarah Millican, Alan Carr, and it's wonderful. Another reason why I do the blog is to watch these wonderful
Yeah.
comics grow, and I list every single show I see for each,
yeah.
and you can watch them develop. It's so good.
Yeah.
Please, can you describe your writing process and where you get your ideas from? So if you were to do a 20-minute set at Edinburgh, how would you go about doing that?
So I try and pick a theme, something that I'm reasonably passionate about, and I'll pick 2 or 3, and then I'll write an anecdote. Something at the moment I am writing stuff that is anecdotal to my life, so I'd write an anecdote, hope that it makes a kind of reasonably interesting story in itself, and then I'd go back through it and try and write jokes and so forth, and
Based on it, yeah.
based on it. And quite often, while I'm doing that, I will then come up with a completely different idea and do that instead. But it might, but it does come, as I say. So I'm fairly structured in it. Okay, I'm going to do this about this, and then I work on that for a few days. As I say, maybe 2 or 3 different ones. But then it's like, no, actually, if I take that bit from there and that bit from there, I can write something different, which is, I don't know if that's. And then, as I say, the thing I love about a comedy course is the fact that you can take these musings back to a group of people who've got some experience. There'll be. So I've done Jeff Innocent's course and Francis Foster. So
you couldn't get any better.
No, to get their input, but also, I mean, both groups I worked with were really strong groups. So to get some input from your mates on the course, and also to get some feedback. No, that is funny. It's not just funny in your head. So I do like that, but obviously, I I don't sign up to writing courses every week, so I'm now trying.
It's fascinating though, because I find that similar with these interviews. I've never interviewed anybody before I did this.
Right.
And my friend in Carlisle who runs a business, she originally the idea for the blog was going to be a book, so I wrote it all as a book.
Okay.
And she said, "This is crying out for a blog." And I basically said, "What's a blog?" And she told me. And then with the podcast, it was exactly the same. I said, "What's a podcast?" And it all started off. But as I interview the comedians, I've got my set of questions, but I've learned how to go off on a tangent. If they go off on a tangent, come back. It's similar with you with your comedy courses. To go and get feedback, I think, is invaluable in whatever you do. Certainly with comedy.
Oh yeah, no. So they were face-to-face courses, but I also did Granier Maguire's course, so she is brilliant for teaching you how. So I use her techniques when I'm looking at a story, and I'm like, okay, how can I put these two sentences against each other so that they sound more ridiculous.
That's brilliant.
So
do you when you I know this is getting quite detailed, but when you're constructing a sentence, do you look for specific words that are funny? The reason why I'm asking it was Ken Dodd infamously said the letter K is funny for some reason.
That's it's something I consider.
I
do consider what other words could I use in a sentence.
Victoria Wood was another one who spent time and time putting the right word in.
Yeah, and that seems to be a truism which I've taken on board, that the K sound or the C sound is going to be funnier. So
to date, what's been your comedy highlight? Is it the Camden Comedy Club? Is it your routines? What is it that or has there been a point in your career when you've done this where you thought, I can do this well, this is working?
So I mean, I did love my first Edinburgh gig. That went down really well, and so there's a few gigs. So my first Edinburgh gig is certainly one of the standout gigs.
Yeah.
My first Rat Pack gig is a standout gig. But also for me, getting into Leicester Silver stand-up final, it was I was surprised that I'd got through. And that was a huge boost. It really
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I guess that they're one of those would be my highlight. But I'm hard pushed to choose one.
That's brilliant. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Now this is a tough question. Did you have comedy growing up?
I did have comedy growing up. Particularly Dave Allen, French and Saunders, Joan Rivers, Joe Brown. I mean, I loved the young ones, and Life of Brian I think I was 12 or 13 when Life of Brian came out, and so me and my friends just thought this was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. And I mean, there were Jasper Carrott was another comedian from my youth. So comedians like that had quite a strong influence.
Yeah.
Comedians today, I think, are brilliant. I'm a bit nervous about missing anyone out. Rather than I think Nathan Cassidy, I think, is amazing. I'm not surprised he's an award-winning comedian. Shazia Mirza has been one of my heroes for a long time. But there's so many brilliant comedians: Jamie D'Souza, Katie Price, Lily Phillips, Laura Smith, Callie Beaton, Ariel Suma, Catherine Mather, Catherine Henson, Kate Barron, David Mills, Javier Costales, Patrick Monahan, Trevor Locke, Victor Patrascan, Kira Ball, just a few of.
I'm so pleased you've written them all down.
Yes.
And what a bill! That is
Yeah.
extraordinary. I recently saw Shazia Mirza at the 40th anniversary of Downstairs at the King's Head,
Mm.
which she was extraordinary. She
I mean,
blew it away. And Nathan Cassidy, every time I see him, the intelligence and the cleverness of his shows are amazing, and how he all links it all in. But my first ever gig was, I was 7 years old,
right.
and we went as a family on holiday to Scarborough, and I saw Les Dawson, and it was just incredible.
Yeah.
And,
No.
and then a year later we saw Tommy Cooper,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
started writing everything down, and that's how I got that. How I just wrote everything down, and so I was there at the start of alternative comedy. I came down to London. My brother lived in Stoke Newington. My first ever comedy store gig would be Steve Gribbin, Phil Jupitus, Richard Morton, Linda Smith, God bless her, and top of the bill was Charles Fleischer, who nobody had ever heard of again, but he was this American with a man with 1,000 voices. And he, a year or so later, he went to Hollywood and he voiced Roger Rabbit, and that rest is history. But I used to go every week, right throughout the 80s, 90s. And I first saw Peter Kay in a room in Manchester on a bill of 5 acts.
Right.
And it was 4th on, and I said to my mate, "This bloke's hilarious." I laughed so hard I missed the 5th act, and I had to go up a month later to Dave Gorman and apologise. Wonderful memories like that. But and you mentioned French and Saunders, absolutely love them.
Yeah.
There's so many great memories.
Obviously, Victoria Wood. I didn't.
Yeah. I saw her in Carlisle. I saw her at the Albert Hall with my mum and dad. Just amazing. Saw Rick Mail in Carlisle. God bless him.
Yeah.
Just on and on and on. There's so many. I would say for me at the moment now, Nathan Cassidy's up there. I love Josh Widdicombe. I think he's hilarious, and I see him regularly. I was in the audience for The Last Leg,
right,
and I have a T-shirt called Richard Says Laugh, and which Ivo Graham got me for, I don't know, he got me at the Edinburgh Fringe. He went, "You like T-shirts?" I said, "I know." So I'm wearing this T-shirt with my friends, and Adam Hills walks on, and it's all live, 9:45, just before they go live, and he goes, "Hello, Richard Says Laugh," and Josh Widdicombe, God bless him, went, "Oh my God, that's Richard Gill. He's the greatest audience member in the world with the loudest laugh." And everybody turned round, looked, and I went, "Ah!" and burst out laughing, and like giving me and it's wonderful memories like that. That just, and because Camden Comedy Club does that whenever I go. It's just a magical thing to do, and the blog is something that is constant. I can do it. As long as I'm mobile, I can get to the gigs. It's just fantastic. So thank you for everything you do, because those gigs are just wonderful, wonderful memories. Like me, following on from that, me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Quite a few, yeah. Not as many as when I used to go to 1 or 2 shows every night. But I did, I do. I probably go to at least 1 or 2 shows a week, other than the ones.
So is that as entertainment, or is that as scouting for comedians to go on your shows?
Generally for entertainment, but I don't miss an opportunity because I'm doing the open mic circuit.
Yeah.
I use that more as an opportunity to scout for new up and coming comedians. But I mean, I will get if there's someone I've heard of and that we haven't had at Rat Pack, then if I see that they're on at one of the venues kind of near me, then I will go out to see what they're like. And I use Edinburgh as well as an opportunity to scout for new talent for Rat Pack and for my Dover gigs.
With all the comedians I've seen over the 50 years, I would love to give you my dream bill.
I'd love it. I'd love to hear
Well,
it.
yeah, definitely. I'm gonna email you after
Yeah.
the show. Um, uh, there is a section in my blog called "The Ones That Got Away," and I've written about 25, I think, who have either sadly passed on or I just haven't had a chance to see. Top of the tree for me is Morecambe and Wise. I
Yeah.
would love to have seen them live. I've seen everything about them. I'm hoping to chat
Yeah.
to Gary Morecambe, no less, which would be amazing about
Right.
his dad's legacy and Ernie's legacy. But you mentioned Dave Allen. I almost had a chance to see him just before he gave up, and I so regret it.
Oh no.
I love Dave
Yeah.
Allen. He's one of the greatest comedians. Just his manner and the way he went about it, it was so good. And he's enjoyed by lots of comedians. They always put him in their favourite lists as well. I've
Yeah.
known. Um, I've so much enjoyed chatting to you. It's been an absolute joy. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go? Where can people find you on social media? Are you writing anything? Have you got any shows coming up? Anything like that?
It's so I can be found on most social media, so Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Fairy Bowls, which was my school nickname.
Oh.
And so when I'm trying to find email addresses, I spend hours looking for S Bowles, Sarah Bowles, Bowles Sarah, and they're always taken. Well, oddly, Fairy Bowles is generally not taken.
There
So
we are.
so that's why it
Definitely.
became. So I used it on Twitter, and I didn't realize at the time that it was going to be visible. So then people started calling me Fairy Bowles again. But yeah, so Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Fairy Bowles, and Facebook, I'm Sarah Bowles. So I've got
And have you got any shows or anything coming up?
no at the moment. I'm just doing bits in kind of mixed bills
Yeah.
and so forth. But
But you're still promoting the
promoting Rat Pack every Friday. We do Rat Pack at the Camden Head, Camden. So obviously there's two iconic comedy pubs in London. One's the well, there's many, but there are two called the Camden Head, one in Camden, one in Angel.
Yeah.
And we frequently get customers for the other
Oh
venue,
no.
but we occasionally get comedians as well. So that can be tricky. But yeah, I do every Friday at the Camden Head, Camden. And the second Sunday of the month, and then the first and the third Sunday of the month at the Regent in Islington.
Yeah.
So, and it's usually for comedians and an MC at Rat Pack gigs, and they're always very high.
Well-
Quality comedians. We have the best comedians in the world who all
Well-
like to do our gigs.
Please keep doing what you do. As I say, the gigs that you put on are extraordinary. I'm looking forward so much to coming back to Camden Comedy Club very soon at the Camden Head. And,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for being a great guest. All the very best to you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.